You've probably flown over it or driven across it, maybe without a second thought. But the border between the United States and Canada isn't just a line on a map. It's the longest international border in the world, stretching over 5,500 miles, and it's packed with more strange stories, historical quirks, and outright oddities than you can possibly imagine. This isn't just a political boundary. It's a place where history, geography, and human stubbornness have created some truly bizarre situations. Ready to explore the world's friendliest and weirdest frontier? Let's dive in. Our story starts way back, long before straight lines were drawn on maps. For centuries, this land was home to countless indigenous nations whose territories flowed freely across what we now call the border. The concept of a hard line just didn't exist. Then European powers arrived, and everything changed. The Treaty of Paris in 1783, which officially ended the American Revolutionary War, tried to define the border, but the mapmakers were working with incomplete, often inaccurate information. They described the boundary as following the highlands and running through the middle of Great Lakes and rivers. It sounded simple, but in reality, it was a recipe for confusion that would last for decades. This brings us to our first major oddity, the Northwest Angle in Minnesota. Look it up on a map. It's that little chimney-like piece of the US that pokes up into Canada, completely cut off from the rest of Minnesota by the Lake of the Woods. To get there by land, you have to drive through Canada first. Why? Blame those old maps. The treaty negotiators thought the Mississippi River originated much farther north than it actually does. They drew a line west from the Lake of the Woods to meet the river, but the line ended up missing it completely, creating this geographical hiccup. Today, the Angle is home to a small community of about 120 Americans. The kids have to take a bus that crosses the international border 4 times a day just to get to and from school. Talk about a unique commute. Then there's the tale of the Pig War. Yes, you heard that right, a war over a pig. In 1859, on the San Juan Islands between Washington State and Vancouver Island, both the US and Britain claimed ownership. Tensions were already high. One day, an American farmer named Lehman Cutler found a British-owned pig eating his potatoes. So, he shot it. When British authorities threatened to arrest him, American settlers called for military protection. Before you know it, both nations had sent warships and soldiers to this tiny island. For months, the two global superpowers stood on the brink of war over a dead pig. Thankfully, cooler heads prevailed. A joint military occupation was established, and eventually, an international arbitrator, Kaiser Wilhelm I of Germany, awarded the islands to the United States. The Pig War ended without a single human casualty, becoming a perfect, almost comical example of how serious border disputes could get. Now let's head east, to the border between Vermont and Quebec. Here, you'll find the Haskell Free Library and Opera House. This building is a Victorian masterpiece, deliberately constructed directly on the international border in 1904. The front door and the library's main collection are in the United States, but the circulation desk and the Opera House stage are in Canada. A thick black line runs across the floor, marking the exact boundary. It was built as a symbol of friendship between the two countries, a place where people could come together, literally crossing a border just to check out a book or watch a play. During travel restrictions, it even became a precious meeting point for families separated by the border, allowing them to see each other across the line inside the library. Speaking of lines, how was the rest of this massive border actually drawn? Especially the long, straight part that runs for over 1,200 miles along the 49th parallel from the Lake of the Woods to the Pacific Ocean. This wasn't done with satellites and GPS. It was done by gritty surveyors in the 19th century, trekking through brutal wilderness, facing extreme weather and hostile encounters. They hauled heavy cast iron markers, each weighing hundreds of pounds, and placed them roughly every mile. It was an astonishing feat of endurance and engineering, but they weren't perfect. If you look closely today, the border isn't a perfectly straight line. It zigs and zags, deviating by hundreds of feet in some places, a permanent testament to the human effort and error that went into its creation. This survey work created even more oddities. Take Point Roberts, Washington. It's another piece of the US that's only accessible by land through Canada. When the surveyors drew the 49th parallel, they sliced right through the Chawasin Peninsula, leaving this tiny tip belonging to the United States. It's a peaceful suburban community, but its unique geography creates daily logistical puzzles. Need to see a specialist doctor? You're likely crossing an international border. High schoolers? They commute into mainland Washington every day. It's a classic case of a line on a map having profound, real-world consequences for the people who live there. And the border isn't just on land. It runs through the middle of the Great Lakes and rivers like the St. Lawrence. This creates some interesting maritime situations. For example, There's a stretch of the Detroit River where, if you're in Detroit, you actually have to look south to see Canada. That's right, the Canadian city of Windsor is south of Detroit, a fun bit of geographical trivia that messes with our sense of direction. And what about all the islands? The Saint Wamide. Lawrence River's Thousand Islands region is split between the two countries. Imagine having a summer cottage where your nearest neighbor is technically in a different country. One of the most unique border towns is Derby Line, Vermont, and Stansted, Quebec. Here, the border isn't just a line in the woods. It runs straight through the middle of town, sometimes through buildings. We already mentioned the library, but there are also houses where the kitchen is in one country and the living room is in another. For generations, life was fluid. People crossed freely to visit family, shop, or work. But after 9/11, security tightened dramatically. Suddenly, flower pots and fences appeared down the middle of Canusa Street to stop cars from crossing. The casual, invisible border of the past became very real and very visible, changing daily life for residents who had always seen themselves as one community. This change reflects the broader evolution of the border itself. For much of its history, it was famously known as the world's longest undefended border, and while it's still incredibly peaceful compared to many others, the modern era has brought increased security, surveillance, and infrastructure. But even with all the technology, the spirit of cooperation remains strong. Fire departments and emergency services from both sides often have mutual aid agreements, ignoring the border when lives are at stake. Trade flows constantly, with billions of dollars worth of goods crossing every single day. It's a partnership that's vital to both nations. From a pig that almost started a war to a library built on an international line, the US-Canada border is so much more than a political division. It's a living museum of history, a collection of geographical accidents, and a testament to both human conflict and friendship. It's a place where two nations have learned to share, to cooperate, and to manage the strange legacy of lines drawn on old maps. The next time you cross it, take a moment. You're not just entering another country, you're stepping across a story that's over 200 years in the making, and it's one of the most fascinating stories in the world. Thanks for joining us on this journey along the 49th parallel and beyond. If you enjoyed this exploration of cartographic quirks and historical oddities, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the fascinating stories that shape our world. Let us know in the comments which border oddity you found most surprising. See you next time!